So according to me, the finest example of a public sculpture is the Cloud Gate at Chicago. And it being because of the simplicity of it. And you realize when you see this that people don't like only seeing sculptures, they like seeing themselves in the sculptures also. It's like looking in a mirror. It's wonderful, it's addictive. It's like the circus mirrors that we used to go to, the things which made you look fat and thin and all that. And this one, by Anish Kapoor, which is I think one of the finest examples, totally takes in the city and reflects it completely. And if you move around it, it changes shape. It changes shape from a beam to a circle. And then when you go down, it's on a slight elevated height. It looks as if the sun is just rising up like that. And you wonder what that glob of mercury is out there, and you go inside and you interact with it. How you interact with it is more because of the reflections than anything else. Okay. So here it is. When you go under the beam, this is what you see. And he has done this so brilliantly well. He has managed to capture the audience so phenomenally, because every time you move in front of the surface, your image changes, the reflection changes, and it's a complete play. It's like you're seeing a piece of theater out there when you're seeing the sculpture. And just to give you an idea of the cost of the sculpture, it started at an estimated $6 million, went up to $11.5 million, and finally ended at $23 million. So do the maths. I don't know. I don't even know how to count that many, but $23 million was the final cost of this sculpture. Now, why do we need art in public spaces? So many times I've been asked, that when you see a sculpture out in public in Bombay, someone says, why don't you use this money to repair the footpath? It doesn't work like that. You need art. Wonderful sort of phrase. That's art without earth, without art is just air. And you don't want to live in air. You want to live on the earth. You want to see beauty. You want to be surrounded by beauty, always. So again, like I said, my case study of New York. If you see New York, someone just had a question. All these photographs are you? Yes, all the photographs are mine. Yes, all of these are clicked by me. So basically, what happens is when you go in New York, I'm sure you have, it's a grid. It's a perfect grid. It's a grid in elevation. It's a grid in plan. And you are bombarded by straight lines, cross lines all along the cityscape. It's wonderful, but it just gets monotonous. And what happens is, suddenly you find this wonderful little piece in the middle of the city on a sort of a footpath, which is nice and wide. And literally, it's like finding love in the city. You say, where is the sculpture? You say, you want to find love in the city? You go to New York, and here, there it is, the sculpture called Love, which was done by Robert Indiana. It's a huge metal piece. Apparently, it was stolen once in the night, and it came back because I guess, you wouldn't know where to put it, correct? So imagine this, straight lines. Imagine straight lines, imagine horizontal lines. It gets boring after some time. It gets after some time. And you need art. You need stuff to break it up. This sculpture by Jeff Koons, which is an inflatable doll, a ballerina. And again, like I said, imagine this square without this sculpture. Anyway, if you see on the left where the ballerina is facing, you can't see it right now. But in the end is the Atlas, the sculpture which comes in front of the Rockefeller Center, and it's wonderful to see that. So anytime you're walking by and you see a sculpture, you connect to it. It need not be always reflective like the beam, but something that lends a smile to your face, something that connects you to it, something that makes you think. It need not be humorous all the time. I love humor. And I love this particular sculpture, which is like, it's quirky. You see it and you can't help smiling, correct? And then, of course, you can lend a little bit of art to the furniture around you, the benches and stuff like that. Like you see that, it's called eating a biscuit. It's called sharing a biscuit. And it's wonderful. And just something like this, which is a large comb, which is a cycle stand. Recently, I found that, and it's a fact, one Spanish artist called Bruno Munari had said that art is no longer to be kept in galleries on pedestals. It needs to come out of there and spread everywhere. And that is what happens when you use art in street furniture, in places where you hold your cycles and stuff like that. It's wonderful. And something as quirky as this drainage, it requires genius to recognize and to see something like this and paint it on. It might not last forever like a sculpture, but it's just recognizing stuff and putting things into perspective. just like this. I mean, it would have been a dilapidated building which was meant to be demolished a long time back, but someone decided to draw a face on it and use the concrete that's hanging from the rods so intelligently that it looks as if he's, sort of someone's knocked his teeth out. And I mean, again, imagine it if it was not there. It's just a building which is falling apart. So it's wonderful to have art in your life at all times. It's been my firm belief since ages that you need to get out art from the gallery because it's too elitist. People in Bombay, a lot of people in Bombay get scared to step into art galleries because they feel it's only for people who can afford it and who can buy it. But no, you're meant to see art and you're meant to fearlessly. If not, get the stuff out from the gallery, get people used to seeing contemporary art out on the streets. So it's time to pick up art from the gallery, get it out, and put it on the pavements, literally. I mean, it's been happening in Mumbai. It's been happening in Mumbai since quite some time. I'll show you examples of how it's been happening, but we need to expand this further much more. So coming to our dear city, coming to our context of what the talk is about, this was just to give you an idea of what's happening in the world around and the quantity of art that is over there. The quality, fine. The quality we can sort of match up to. We've got fabulous artists, but the quantity of art that is in the city is phenomenal. It's like walking through an art gallery in any European city these days. So when you think of sculptures in Bombay, number one, they don't call it sculptures. They're still not used to. They call them statues. So if you're thinking of sculptures and statues in Bombay, generally you would think of political figures, which is wonderful because they're a part of history. But we need contemporary art outside. It is extremely important to change the mindset of the people, to get them to understand what art is about. Like I keep saying, they need not like it. If you put an abstract out in the public and the common man walks by and he scorns at it, he says, he doesn't understand it. It's perfectly okay. He sees it. Keep on bombarding him with stuff like that and see how his whole attitude to art changes. Very old photograph I found. I remember seeing this sculpture myself. It's right in the center of the screen at the bottom, and it is Pilu Pochkhanawala's sculpture, which was 28 feet tall, an iron sculpture which was 28 feet tall. This was before the Haji Ali Circle was demolished, and then someone thought of taking the traffic through and all that. I still feel the roundabout has to come back. It was a wonderful sort of, I would say it was a wonderful space to sort of, go around. Anyway, coming back to the sculpture, one of the first contemporary art sculptures, one of the first contemporary sculptures to be in the city was this one by Pilu Pochkhanawala. It cannot be seen now. It rusted and fell away. There's a reason for that. This is a replica of it, which has right now in a small garden opposite the NCPA. So between the NCPA and the museum, if you look the next time you're driving by, a small replica of it has been kept there. For ages together, people used to think it's a peacock because of its flared out abstract rods going by. That's again fine, perfectly all right. It wasn't a peacock, but if people thought it was a peacock, it's okay. If it's an abstract, you're supposed to use your own imagination and think whatever you may of it. But actually, it was the sparked by the BST and it collapsed because the horizontal rods that you see there were somehow, some of the shanties nearby decided that they were wonderful to hang their clothes on. So throughout the day, unfortunately, the whole sculpture of Pilu Pochkhanawala had these clothes hanging there to dry, which further corroded the sculpture faster than it was meant to be, and it got completely damaged and then removed. So coming to one of my pieces, one of my first. I was sorry, I shouldn't have given that out. So I went here. This is Jewel of India, Nehru Center, and I stood next to this sculpture and I asked my friend to photograph it. And the watchman came out and he scolded me. He's saying, "Nahi sahab, photo nahi le sakta. You cannot click yourself against it." So I said, "Why?" So he's saying, "Sir has got it from Dubai and there is some issue with the paperwork, so you can't click yourself with it." I told him, I said, "It has been installed by me just 1 week back. I've made it." But it just goes to show that anything which is unique, at that time, the watchmen also thought it came from abroad. They had no idea that it could be made here. And just to give you an idea, this was made in 87. And this was a time when I didn't have a single helper. I worked on this single-handedly. It's about 9 feet tall. And I remember welding it. And when I had to carry it, all I had to do was wave out to friends across the street who came and helped me put in the tempo to install it here. So this was done way back there. Absolutely my first public art piece to be out in the open. I've been lucky and fortunate to have been able to capitalize on some of the traffic islands in Mumbai. And this started first, of course, with the Rhino sponsored by Seat Tires. It was their logo, just sort of a symbol of strength and power. And so Mr. Harsh Goenka, of course, who's the forerunner in responsible for putting so much art out in the public, he was the one who sponsored this at that time. This was 1993, and it just was out there as a sculpture, as a sort of a contemporary piece of art, as against something that we have been seeing regularly. A lot of people had not put contemporary out in the open. I was very thankful that he gave me the opportunity to do so. And the best thing about this is that this is the way it is. It's charging forward. And if you see, there are a lot of rocks below, which is the way I planned the landscape, because I wanted him to look rugged, to look fierce. And when I was installing it, I required special permission because there was a huge crane, there was a truck, etc. And when I was installing it, a lot of policemen came and said, do you have the permission, so and so, etc. I said, yes, I've got it. I showed them the paper. And then it was hilarious. I always love listening to people talk about art. And when it's unusual art, it's more that the conversations are more unusual always. And this one policeman was talking to the other. He's saying, "See, kangaroo kasala lavla." You know, he said, why the hell did someone put a kangaroo there? So I went back and I sort of studied a little further, and I realized I definitely had not made a kangaroo. It was 100% a rhinoceros, but since it was charging and he was almost on his last two legs, it looked like a kangaroo, and that's what he thought it was. The story linked to this is that once you do a sculpture, what you have around it also should be linked to it. Now, what happens in this case was the sculpture was made, the rockery was done, but then a landscape designer came and he planted the most pretty trees and flowers. Somehow killed the rhinoceros because he just didn't look as he was charging. And just to give you an idea, there's a Christmas tree in silhouette in front of it, which is sort of also there. Of course, now again, it's going to come back to its position with the kind of landscape that I want. That is the sort of deal I've got. It's gone in repair right now. The next one, this was again a phenomenal story. I had a client, Lokanwala Builders, who called me and said, there's a traffic island near Podar Hospital Junction. So, I mean, normally people say, I want a sculpture. They show me the space and then I'm supposed to design for it. But no, he said, I want dolphins. So I said, okay, fine. And the next thing that came, he gave me an absolute shocker. He's saying, I want it in 15 days because it's my dad's birthday. And he is like a big shot in that area, and it has to be inaugurated on his birthday. If you can do a 12-foot sculpture, 15 feet dia this way and all that, in 15 days, then you take it on. Otherwise, I'm not paying you. And I'm used to saying yes to everything, and I agreed. And it was crazy. It was crazy. I mean, whoever I would call it, stainless steel was not even a material I was very used to using in that time. And when I called people and I said, you know, I have to do this in 15 days. I called fabricators to have a look at my drawings, which were life scale. I said, how much time will you take? Everyone, believe me, everyone told me 2 months, 3 months, 3.5 months. I said, how much time have you got there? I said, 15 days. And they all just would laugh and walk away. So at that time, Kushnuma was working with me. We picked up machines overnight. We picked up men from other industries overnight and worked in 3 shifts. And believe it or not, with all the effort that was put in, we finally managed to put the dolphins on site, in which happens very rarely. If someone asked me to do it again, I don't think I could do it. It's just that sometimes everything sort of works together and comes about. It was not even complete. I was sitting and grinding the base over there when it was being fit. And of course, today it's one of the most prominent ones in the traffic island. On the map, on the RTO map, I studied somewhere. Mr. Satish Mathur, who was the commissioner, then told me, he's saying, Arzan, they're now calling it Dolphin Island. They don't even call it by the name of the sort of chalk over there, which is good. So this is Dolphin Island for you. So again, I'm still on my traffic islands. Sometime back, ex-Commodore, Mr. Medioma Bada, who is fondly known as Mike with his colleagues, he came to me and he told me a story which literally shocked me. He was one of the fighter pilots who flew from the decks of the INS Vikrant. And it was shocking that the government had suddenly realized to scrap the Vikrant. Means that they were selling history per kilo, literally. They had completely negated the idea that there was anything like history attached to it. They sold it off to a scrap dealer for a certain amount of money, and the pilots and the crew on the Vikrant were heartbroken because they thought that this would be with them forever like a memorial. So what Mr. Bhara did was he came to me, he took me to the scrapyard. This is the Vikrant getting scrapped. He and couple of others put in their own money and bought the scrap. What you see right now at the bottom right corner is the rivets from the Vikrant. These are the original rivets which held the Vikrant. When it was built, like our bridges, like Tilak Bridge, like the Howrah Bridge, there was no welding present. They used to use these rivets to sort of put things together. It's wonderful. And he took me there. We picked up the scrap, and then we made a memorial for the Vikrant, which is today in front of the Lions Gate in Kolaba. And it's wonderful. So, and he was so happy. He's saying it was like when he explained to me, saying when they would fly off the decks of the Vikrant and come back after a combat or so, it would feel as if they're coming back to their mother, literally like a mothership, as we call it. And I was very happy that I could sort of resurrect it and keep it for posterity, for memory forever. The chain you see is the original anchor chain over there. I did a little deck with little bit planes on top. I told them I won't do a replica of the Vikrant. That doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm not a model maker. We'll do a contemporary take on it. Okay. And that's exactly what we did. And here on the bottommost photograph, you see a cobbed wheel which is different color from the main sculpture. That is one of the propeller shafts, a small propeller shaft, which I left unpainted because I wanted to show the actual color of the metal. And 3 monsoons have passed and it's not got a speck of rust on it. That is the kind of metal that went into the Vikrant. And now the fourth one, this is a secret. The sculpture is already up there. Believe it or not, I installed it in its position in Worli. It's wrapped up. It was meant to be inaugurated on the 27th, but before that, everything locked down and we got locked down at home. To give you an idea of the sculpture that is going to come there. It's a 15-footer. I'm not going to tell you what it is, although you can see what it is. I'm not going to tell you who it's for because I'm not supposed to. But these are just bits and pieces of the sculpture, which was being cast in bronze. It's going to be a bronze sculpture, 15 feet tall in one piece out in Worli. It will open very soon, I'm sure. So, coming back to some other artists, one of my favorite works, Mr. Adi Daverwala's sculpture at the IIT Powai, which was the Blossom of Knowledge. Now, what do these sculptures do? Basically, they add value to a space. Every piece of art that you put in adds value to a place. Visual value, as well as I would say authoritative value that, this is a place which someone has thought of investing in art and putting it there to enhance the whole thing. It's not only visual. There's a feeling attached to it. It's not only visual. One of my favorite sculptures out in the open, which is no longer out in the open, it's been shifted somewhere. Sculpture by noted artist Jaideep Mehrotra, who also happens to be a very good friend. Of course, you can see it's Sachin Tendulkar sculpture. But what you should see in detail is that the black is the positive and what you see in white is actually the negative. It's a beautifully made sculpture from carbon fiber. He's actually made it from carbon fiber, which is a very rare material to make a sculpture in. And I'm just giving you ideas of what kind of talent we have here and what kind of sculptures we can still put out in the open to enhance our city. Sunil Padwal's tetrapods doing a little sort of balancing act, defying gravity. We see these tetrapods every day near Chowpatty and near all our shores. So it's just a sort of take, it's a quirky take on the tetrapods which protect our city from the tides. There it is. Just to give you an idea, the concrete slab at the back was actually put so that you could see the image. Otherwise, you could only see the background and the black sort of dissipated. The Dabbawala, a very, very favorite subject among all artists. This is Valay Shemde's work. I'm just giving you an idea of other artists who put their out in sort of the public domain. This is it's called The Director. This is at the Mehboob Studio Chowk, again by RPG. This one is, of course, Upadhyay's head again at Nariman Point. Just to give you an idea. And this is so they're very topical. The film thing is at Mehboob Studio. The Kolivada, the fish thing is opposite the Mahim docks, where Mahim fishery. Okay, so it's very topical, and I think we need sculptures like this to sort of, number one, enhance the area. I keep repeating that, sorry, but also to end a little meaning to that place. So what do these sculptures do to me? To me, they are like an oasis in a desert, literally. You walk endlessly in a city, suddenly you come up to a piece of art and you take a breather. You may not physically stop, but your mind takes a breather just when it sees a piece of art and takes it in and sort of enjoys it. It literally is like that. You cannot have a city or a place without art. It has to be planned right from the beginning, and we need to get this a little stronger. Coming to some two-dimensional works, Brenda Miller's mural at the docks, wonderfully done. I mean, imagine this wall, again, imagine this wall blank. People would just walk by. Here, people take notice, okay? Here, people take notice, and it lends so much value to the place. It lends so much character to the place because there is a historic value to it. There is a meaning to it. And of course, it's on the wall of the naval docks, which makes it sort of all the more meaningful. Another one sort of which was done recently, the RPG wall, which is, I call it the thank you wall. And it's sort of been painted by Kumar, and you can see the whole thing from the road. Another thing I want to come up, when I show you some sculptures that I've done for the corporates in the later part of the slideshow, it is so phenomenal that there are so many people who are willing to spend on art, which is in their compounds, like the Seat wall, but which can be enjoyed by the public passing by. So a lot of thought has been put in it. It's not only for the building. It is not only for the person who has sort of, I'm very, very sorry. This is a one painted by Samir Kulabur. So basically, it is a selflessness. It is about people who can invest in art, who put it in their compounds, but which is visible from the outside, which makes a lot of sense, you know. One of my favorite ones, Dada Saheb Phalke, on a building in Bandra Mine. Wonderful. I mean, the bright yellow color and all that. It's such a boring facade otherwise. It's a part of the building which has all the washrooms, and hence there are no windows also over there. And it's wonderful that someone has thought of this and put it there. So meaningful. And of course, you pass through Dharavi these days, and you see these wonderful paintings being done on the walls. And what I love about them is how they have kept, I mean, someone might actually contradict and say, why didn't they paint it fresh? Why didn't they give it a fresh coat of paint? But to me, instead of sort of, you know, just sort of going just with plain colors, someone has studied the kind of texture over there. Someone has studied the kind of public and even passing by, and used the sort of the walls which are sort of getting all corroded and stuff like that in the paintings as a part of the work. And if you see the subjects also there, they look like the whole cast of the Slumdog Millionaire coming together, you know. So it's wonderful how these playful images add value to your life as you're driving by. Because believe me, when you're driving by through Dharavi, there is no speeding there. You'll better go slow, and now you can, you know, sort of enjoy the works. It's as if you're driving through a gallery. These are some of the outdoor works which I'll go through of mine. And just to show why they were done, this one was done outside the Parsi Agyari. It's the flying bull called the Goda. And it was wonderful. The priests got together there, the trustees got together there. And this was way back in 88, 89, even before I had my first exhibition. And so what happened was that this came about because they wanted a sculpture that they were not very happy with me using scrap, actually. But it was okay. That was the only medium I knew then. And if you look at the horn of the bull, it's a tap. It's actually a tap fitting, which I used to use at that time. So just running through some of the stuff which I've done in the past to enhance spaces. This was the entrance of a very well-known nightclub, which, sorry, didn't last too long. It closed down. But it was like entering a machine. And the whole thing, it was called Mykonos. And basically it was, I mean, I enjoyed working on this whole sculpture. It looked as if you're entering the machine. And that's me putting the final coat of paint on it. Just, by the way, whenever I do large sculptures, I love climbing on them and then looking down, sort of how the whole thing looks like that. Normally, no one's going to climb on top and look down. But it's just, to me, it gives me a lot of satisfaction when I can walk on top of my sculpture and then look down and see how tall I have gone. This particular sculpture is not in Mumbai. I sort of put it here just for a purpose. And this one is, of course, it's outside a shopping mall in Surat. And it's a very playful sort of a character, large foreground they've got. And it was very nice of them to think of an art piece, because now this foreground is used to watch matches on a large screen. They sit out there with the chatais and they eat their food and stuff like that. And this one sort of adds a little bit of humor to it. There's this like, you can see that the husband has had it and he's moving towards the car with all the bags and everything. He's pulling the wife, and the son is pulling the mother back there again. So it's like a little tableau happening there. And in the same place, sitting on the floor and eating. The reason why I put this piece here is that this was in Surat, Gujarat. They are very, very, there's no contemporary art out there in the open, and to put something like this to expose the people there as to what goes on in the rest of the world. And purposely I've done these very simple stick figures so they look very babyish and the people connect to it at once. But what was funny was I didn't title these sculptures. Okay, so the owners and the public titled it. The one with the shopping was called Majani Life, and this one was called Jaman Jalso. Okay. And I just went with it. It was in Gujarat. They loved it. They connected to the title. So I said, okay, fine. You can call it what you want. It's perfectly all right. But then the next day, there was a press article. And the two sculptures appeared over there in the center. And they've written there, Jaman Jalso and Majani Life. And what was ironical is, read the news around. 4 cows crushed to death. Nurses not got salary for 3 months. Leopard captured. 150 arrested. Liquor worth 1 lakh. So it was all bad news surrounding all this piece which was there. And so everything around happens, but you're supposed to have a Majani life. So that's what that was. I found that quite quirky. So I put Tarol Dam. Terrible. This is the Birla sculpture. Again, placed in such a way that it can be seen from the outside. Just it's a corporate sculpture, and hence the steel and all that. And of course, it adds a lot of value to their office building. When the visitors come, it's there right in the roundabout where people enter, and it sort of commands a lot of respect when people walk in. If you see the musculature of the sculpture that I have shown. So it's a very powerful sculpture, reaching for the sun and then going beyond it. I love this one. Again, sorry, this is not in Bombay, but I put it there just to sort of prove a point. So this is a hand holding an iPhone, if you see that. Okay, it's a detail of one of my sculptures. And this is a hand holding a briefcase. And this is the sculpture. And it's 15 feet tall, it's cantilevered, and it says off to work. Now, when I did this, again, thanks to the owners, they've kept it in such a way that the whole of the main road of Bangalore can see it. So if you don't have an island to put a piece outside, you can do this, whereby you achieve the piece within yourself. And also there's a question from Suki. So do you think then that the sculptures tell a story of our times? Our times will be known for shopping and eating and phone calls. I believe that sculptures also, Suki, yes, there are some sculptures which should sort of show the times you're living in, and an iPhone or a phone is a part of their lives. You can't go away from it. I think the first thing a person checks right now going out is a phone and now a mask. I think the wallet has gone third after the mask. Today morning, I just stepped out without my mask and I realized that I was without some sort of, I was missing some important part in my life. So this particular one I called Off to Work. And so that time the client said he looks like more as if he's going back home after a Friday to a weekend. He doesn't look like he's coming to work. But then the lockdown happened and I said, no, now people will again look like this when they're going back to work. People are longing to get back with a long stride. This one of the tallest pieces I did for Jaguar. This was a very eventful piece in such a way that this was unveiled at Marine Drive. The whole of Marine Drive was crowded. It was, of course, not to sort of serve the public. It was meant to be a launch for a luxury vehicle. There was a huge ramp that I had created and these vehicles went on top. But the good thing about this was, what Jaguar did was, they did it out in the open so the public could also see it. So one fine evening, this is in 2016, there were people lined on Marine Drive because this was in one of the gymkhana and they could see this happen. And it was wonderful. And just to give you an idea of the construction of it, and it was like sort of a part engineering, part architectural, part sculptural project for me. Again, just to give you an idea how a sculpture adds to a building. This is Abersekar Heights. I mean, he could have put a name board there directly, but he preferred to sort of put it in a sculpture so that it enhances it. It gives value to his building a little further. This was right outside in Worli. Coming to Peninsula, and this architect Parag Parekh, he was responsible for this. And if you see the stainless steel sculptures in the background over there, basically what we did was we suspended these large abstract stainless steel forms in 4 columns, which sort of showed as if the theme was that it was an idea, and then ideas merged. So there were 4 sets of suspended stainless steel pieces like this, and wonderfully done lobby and all that, beautifully crafted. You can see it from outside. Again, you can see it from outside. I'm so thankful for that some of the buildings have these lobbies and all that which are visible from the road, so that the people passing by also can enjoy the sculptures this way. It's wonderful. We need to see art. Believe me, we really need to see art. This is, of course, inside one of the buildings, just to give you an idea of how simple forms can sort of connect into these very architectural sculptures. This is inside the Casa Grande. And the pebble, people tell me this looks too very much like Anish Kapoor's sculpture. And I mean, just because it's stainless steel and reflective, but this is a pebble. And the whole idea was that it should look as if the water spray is sort of rising and throwing this pebble up in the air. That was the idea. Okay. Transcon, again, one of the sculptures which can be seen from the outside. It's a suspended sculpture. It's 17 feet tall. And what I like about this piece is when you see it from the outside, it looks like this. It's called spatio-temporal, meaning space and time, with it suspended within space and time. That was the theme. And this is what it looks like from the inside. So from the outside, there's another. So even the inhabitants, the residents of the building can see it as well as the people outside. Art, like I said, need not be on a pedestal. It need not be individual sculptures. This was a railing which I'd done for architect Udayan Bhatt. This is St. Andrew's Auditorium, and I call it the performers. So we actually put these flat sort of cutout figures as if they were performing in the railings, which added to the drama, not on the stage itself, but even outside, even before you enter the auditorium. And I did a goalpost for a children's football academy recently, and I did these cutouts on top, again, to add a little bit of playfulness, to add a little bit of, interest to everyone that's looking. Something to look at besides what you just see every day is wonderful. And that is what art does. That's why we see movies. This was an experiment we did last year on Dasera. Plastic waste, jerry cans and stuff like that. This was on Carter Road. It's a 12-foot Ravana, as you can see. Nice and colorful. And a lot of people these days ask me what you can do from plastic. And you can do lots. You can do wonderful stuff. But you need the right kind of plastic. You need it to be sort of eco-friendly. You don't want stuff that lets out these fumes in the sun and all that. So we're very careful when we do a plastic sculpture to check what sort of grade of plastic it is. And if it can be saved and someone can put a sculpture permanently, that much plastic going less in your landfills, which is better. It's a minuscule amount, but this one I just kept for a very quirky reason out here. This is if you can call it a public sculpture, but I just love the way it looks. 2 people cycling along a pathway. This was done for a friend of mine called Ravinath. And the best part about this sculpture is that it is just 4 inches tall. I've just kept it there just to see how I photographed it. It looks like a public sculpture. I wish someone would do a cycling sculpture like this somewhere out in the open. Now, one of my largest pieces. This is in the IT park in Pimpri. And to give you an idea, these are the size of the panels. 25 feet diameter, 3.5 tons suspended from the ceiling by wires. What does this sculpture do to the space? Imagine this large atrium empty without anything. The architect was suggesting chandeliers and lights, but the client, being very intelligent and very well traveled, said, no, let's do something which incorporates a light inside, but let's do more of a sculpture than a physical light. So whenever you go from something that is just purposeful to something that it definitely adds much, much more value to the whole space. This was done for Tata TCS, Tata Consultancy Services inside, but again, it's kept in such a way that it can be seen from the glass outside. Now, there are, like I said, we need a lot more art out on the streets. We need a lot more events which put art out on the streets for common people to see. There have been a lot of people who are into this since a long, long time. I'll just tell you about it. So this was the police way back. This was 2005. Mr. Satish Mathur was the commissioner of police, and he, together with Brenda Miller, whose name is synonymous with the Kalagora festival, and a lot of other stuff happening in Bombay. They decided to take up chowkis, police chowkis around Bombay, Boivada, the airport chowki here, and then give it to artists to do their renditions on it. It was a wonderful thing. We were able to experiment with it. Of course, you like it, don't like it, it's a different matter. But what you see right now in the green and yellow are actually backlit panels of paintings of Sunil Padwal, which he had done. And unfortunately, the light was not on at that time. But we did about, I think, 9 to 10 chowkis like that they managed to do. And the artists were Bose Krishnamachari, myself, Papri Bose, Brenda, of course, was involved. And I did a lot of metalwork on it from my scrap and stuff like that. Then, this is one of them also. I don't know which artist did this, but this is also done somewhere near Girgaon. So, Mr. Vikram Sethi once managed to do sort of a sculpture garden. Unfortunately, he didn't get permission to change it into a sculpture garden permanently. It would have been wonderful if there could be pedestals which are just, let's say, 2 feet by 2 feet within a park in Bombay. First of all, we don't have parks. And secondly, if we have parks, we don't have sculptures. So if there could be a park which would get, let's say, 10 pedestals like that and have 10 sculptures put there, and why not have a contemporary sculpture garden which is completely missing? Whenever I talk about sculpture garden, people talk about Nekchand and Chandigarh. Yes, it's there. It's been there since ages. But I'm talking of contemporary sculptures done by the artists of today, so that it becomes an open museum for people to walk through, and hopefully they'll not be sort of scared to walk into a garden as against walking into a gallery which appears to be sort of away for something. Is art for the masses? Yes, I'll come to that. Of course, art is for the masses. That's what we need to push it out in the open. This was an experiment that some of the artists and some photographers got together. I'm sorry, it didn't last too long. It lasted 3 Sundays. We took on this rampart row for a Sunday and tried to visualize that if we put art in the public, how it would work. Very, very little attendance we got. It was not, of course, publicized. But imagine this. I mean, completely pedestrianize the Kalagora fountain area over a weekend. Pedestrianize it. And put out your food trucks there. Put out art there. Put out performers there. I keep telling people that when you go to a foreign city, the first thing that you do, it's happened to me so many times. Your flights reach in the morning somewhere, any city in Europe, normally. Your rooms are not ready till afternoon. So what we do is we plonk our bags in the reception and walk out. Where do you go first? First, you go to a town square, a main town square, where you find everything. You can sit down for breakfast there. You can listen to a musician playing over there. You can walk. You can window shop, you can walk around, you can look at the people. And that is something which is missing in Mumbai, which is, I think, very easy to do if we put our mind to it. I'll come to that later. We had suggested this to the new body that's formed, which governs sort of art to a certain extent in Bombay. Here it is. These are my sculptures. So very few, very, very limited attendance, but it's okay, you know. So the elephant project worked out very well, of course. This is a project which is headed by actually the royal family. It's a donation to collect money to counter elephant poaching around the world. And what I liked about this was how the elephants were displayed in Mumbai. I think it was wonderful. They had blocked off the gateway of India, and then for a whole week, they had it on the promenade in Marine Drive. That is what is needed. Can you imagine the Marine Drive promenade? You have walkers there, fine, walk past it. But let art come into your daily lives, you know. There are some people say, oh, they're disturbing our pattern of walking or so, and so you cannot have this attitude. You should let art into your lives very openly. Of course, good art. You're talking of good art. The Sneha Sudden experiment. Again, Brenda Miller's name will keep on appearing many times. I call her my art mummy. She's the one who introduced me to a lot of things in Bombay on the art scene. And this is a project by 3 artists, Brenda, myself, Sunil Padwal. We got together with some artists who had come from France and Sneha Sudden. Okay. So what we did was we went to Sneha Sudden. First, of course, we discussed what the project was. We went to Sneha Sudden and gave them these little 4 inches by 4 inches cards and pins and magazines and stuff like that. And we asked them to put down their views or their dreams or whatever. Just imagine stuff and put it down. Also, we told them if there are broken toys which they have, which they have played in the past. These are all from an orphanage. So don't forget, there are no fancy toys as such. I said, just get them if you're not using them. We want to use this in a piece of art. Okay. So they sat there. And over 2-3 days of painting and stuff like that, we gave them the acrylic paints, and they sort of went completely crazy, writing stuff. Naming their idols, who they want to be like, and what their desires were, and all that. And then what we did was we collected all this, and we started putting these in mousetraps. So this was mousetrap idea where we came collectively, and we started putting it in mousetraps. All this stuff, including the photographs which Sunil had taken, which you see right now, the black and whites. And we sort of combine it with their toys and stuff like that, put it all together, and then made a whole sculpture from it, which we exhibited on CST station. I keep on saying VT station, sorry, CST station. We put it on CST station on the platform because we wanted to see what the public that gets down from the trains every day think of it. So we couldn't put it without a slight barricade because otherwise it would have gone for a toss. And also this exhibition went to France later, so it had to be protected a little. But we had kept a little in and out so that people would walk through. First, they were very skeptical. Then we started standing on one side and asking people to go in, to have a look at the work and all that. That's when they sort of noticed something. Believe me, out of those lakhs of people which pour out, even 100 realize it and like it or not like it and take into account that this is an example of contemporary art. This is an example of what you can do with some students from an NGO getting together as a collaborative work. I think it's wonderful. And then, of course, it was taken to the Phoenix at Palladium, where it was displayed there, and the children were called there. They had a blast over there. It was so lovely to see them because they'd never been to places like this. It was wonderful. They all came there. These were all the children who had worked on this complete thing. So this also is a way of putting art in public, which is more meaningful. Of course, it cannot be permanent because when something like this is made, it has to be fast. It has to sort of churn interest. There has to be more meaning in it. But this particular sculpture, of course, is still somewhere. I think it went to France with the artist and they're exhibiting it there. Now, coming to, everyone has heard of the Kalavara Festival. Who has not? I know of people now who schedule their holidays according to the festival, and it has grown, and how it has grown. And of course, thanks to a lot of people there, and Brenda, of course, who right from the beginning was at the helm of this. And you can see how it became so popular that it just expanded, and that area was not enough to hold the exhibition, and hence it just traveled, and now you've got Cross Maidan and Oval Maidan and stuff like that. It just spread over the whole place, which is so wonderful. It is a prime example of what a festival of art should be like, and how in that 1 week, you can see how people are thirsty for art, how people are thirsty for music in the city, and how they throng to see the vibrancy of young amateur artists who sort of come together and put up this whole thing and display their works and all that. It's wonderful. It's a absolute high to see the public sitting in the background of the Asiatic Library and watching a concert, and it's phenomenal. I remember Shankar Mahadevan performing there once, and genuinely, he said, I've never seen such a setting in my life. So behind was the Horniman circle, in front of him is the library, and you could see he was on a high. And the public of Bombay just strong, they are very thirsty for stuff like that. And one of our first projects which we did for Kalagora Festival, and believe it or not, we kept it in the parking lot. And at that time, the parking lot was not allowed to be used for the festival. So we had to actually pay the parking lot money to reserve that much amount of space so that we could fit in this installation that myself and Brenda did. And we had a very key name to it, which I had read behind a tempo once. I keep on reading behind tempos and trucks. I find it very interesting. And this particular one, there's a saying which says "Dekho magar pyar se," correct? We have this thing. So this was fantastic. I saw "Dekho magar pyar se," and underneath that they are translated in English. I'm sorry, "Dekho magar pyar se," and they are translated in English, "See but lovely." And so we call this installation "See but lovely." And this was in the parking lot. Again, 1 year hence, in 2002, myself, Brenda, and Subodh Kerkar from Goa, we got together and we made this large 30-foot sculpture called Picasso Incorporated. This was sponsored by Voltas. It was very nice of them to give us their welders, their scrap and all that. And look down properly at the photograph, you still see cars parked there. This was still at the time when the parking lot was not taken over and we had to make do with what space was given to us. In the beginning of my talk, Farooq had asked me, do you want me to tell you how much time you spent? I thought I'll put the timer, but I have not. So I'm just going ahead. Sorry. And this is what it looked like. This was Picasso Incorporated, done by us. And it's wonderful how you can just try to how one festival has just grown crazily. Coming to the Kalagora Festival, this is what we did in 2006. In 2006, the Kalagora Committee took a phenomenal decision of including kids' activities in the Kalagora Festival. This changed the whole the map of Kalagora completely. People who are coming there only to see art without their children, because there was a lot of commotion and all that, they would leave their kids there because it became kid-centric. One area was only dedicated to kids, and now how it has grown. Everyone thronged there, and this was a metal frame that I had done, and we invited kids to come over 6 days to get the scrap from the houses and tie it on the horse physically. They had to themselves tie it on the horse. And what happened through the whole process was we filled up the whole body of the horse. One of the kids over there called it the Color Goda. So we thought it was a wonderful name to go ahead and did. So the Color Goda in Kalagora, and it worked so well that it was put out on display for about a week on the steps of Jangirari Rally, because it's very rare, they don't allow it. But this was put there for a week before we had to do it permanently. And this was the Color Goda for you. So it was done by 3,000 kids. They counted 3,000 kids coming from NGOs or schools over a period of 7 days, and then tied one piece on this and became a part of Mumbai's history, so to speak. You know, one of the pieces done by then, again, sorry, but why sorry? Again, done with Brenda, the collaboration with Brenda. This was all with Bisleri bottles, and you can't see, but it's amazing. One could go inside and sort of turn around and stuff like that. And one of the 3 artists, Dipti Nair, Uttara Joshi, and Anjana, they basically do a lot of paintings, and they've done these 3D forms. And I helped them put this together into a 3D sort of installation out there. The reason I put it here is that it is phenomenal that Kalagora gives a chance to artists who are not big names, but who come out and want to experiment. And that is very much needed, because it gives them the right exposure. Right exposure, not in a way that someone sees them and someone sort of commission them in a work, not that. It sort of gives them an idea of what their art does in public, what art looks like in public. And hence this piece was very, very important to be out there. And then, of course, one of the last pieces in Kalagora that I talked from, this was done in collaboration with Toy Bank. Shweta Jari of Toy Bank, she approached me, she said, let's do a sculpture. And we thought, I said, why not cycles? There's a lot of cycle scrap lying around, and I love cycling personally. So I said, let's get a lot of cycle scrap. And then we basically called sort of students from Raja Sansan to help us. And then they put this sculpture together at the Kalagora, photographed by none other than Suki. And it was coming from all the photographs which I got by the students and all that, I thought this was the most stuff, and that's why I used it. Thank you, Suki. And it's wonderful, 15 feet tall, out there, and by the time the festival was over, the whole day was filled with yellow post-its of people sort of giving their, what do you say, their views on what it was like and what noise it meant to them when it was small and all that. And that's up to my mind to do such a wonderful project. Now, I'm almost coming to the end. We always keep on talking about art in public places. There is one project which was done in Bandra, which recently literally blew me out. It's phenomenal. If this little example that is done in Bandra can be replicated in other parts of Bombay, our city will get rich in terms of its value of art in no time. This is something that is called the St. Stephen's Steps. This is just from Mount Mary. On the right, there is a cathedral called there's a church called St. Stephen's Church. Opposite, there were steps which were in dilapidated condition and used for dumping debris of all the construction material around. Architect Alan Abraham got to this space, studied it, did the plan, the cooperator got away, and within no time, they converted this place into something called the steps, St. Stephen's Steps. And the way he designed it, the way Alan has designed it, it is a multifunctional steps which can be used for various activities. I myself have attended 2 or 3 of them. This is what happens there. They gave up the walls to various artists to paint on it. They curated it so well. Every Sunday, every weekend, there are dance performances happening. There are open door exhibitions happening. There is a wonderful sculpture which was designed by Alan himself. The Christmas tree which has been put there. Alan's wife, Anka, is also social media side of this and promoting it, and I just found it so brilliant. And this was one place where I would love to go and spend the weekend. We don't have places to go. We think of malls. We quickly go in malls and do our window shopping and sit in a restaurant and see a movie and come back. But this is what is required. And this little example can get spread over all over Bombay. It need not be steps. It could be just small areas which are unused. Basically, stop the traffic, clear the area, put art there, put music there, get in your food trucks. Food trucks are very important for people because they can hang around them for a longer time and it's so much fun. And this is a prime example of it. And hats off to them who have done this. The same steps. Okay, coming to the last part of my lecture, the MCMC. It is the Mumbai Commission for Arts, Music and Culture. It was formed 1 year back. The BMC invited myself and a couple of other architects and people from the art field, people from the literature field, people from the music field to come together and idea on how you get art out into the public. I haven't got the best of photographs that illustrate this, but I'll tell you the kind of work that we've been doing so far. Number one, you will not see our work, which is good. When I say not see our work, we are in charge of getting together and deciding what sort of art should come out in the public or what should not be allowed. And when I say you don't see our work, it's because so much art was being brought to us, which was very protested in nature. We had to put a stop to it. And I'm so glad that this exists right now. I hope this continues and to stop again art from coming out to the city. We don't need that. We have taken up a project with the judges of architecture and art to develop one part under the JJ flyover. A lot of students observe that as to how can I connect the size, what do you do there, how do you utilize the underbelly of the flyovers to make the exciting. We have asked one project which is just another area and the workshop where lighting and murals have been done. That is something that will come up in the future. We have seen a phenomenal project which was presented by Mural from Khaki. The entire Khaki we have asked that, and of course things take time, but we are there to sort of work on all these. There's one very little. If you go on better road, then there is a forest. The entire area was just a small garden there. Even I was a proposal of putting a sculpture there and paint the wall. Just to give you an idea, we said, okay, fine, we open the sculpture, but we design up the whole community and decided to leave the wall blank and decided to let the flourish shop a little more creative. It look like a couple cabin, and like that. So these things are going on, and I hope that the MCMC, us, and the public in general sort of sensitize themselves to art like this. And you need not love every piece with that. Perfectly okay. It's totally all right. You need love every piece of art. You need not love every piece you see. You can hate it also. That doesn't mean people stop painting. People stop painting. Give your opinions. And I think we are moving in the right direction. You only need to go a little faster. I've always said that my geography is one of the best cities in the world. The street from CST to legal is one of the best streets in the world. We have the best art deco on my right. We just need to get that act together. We need to get on board, sort of things out. It's only about sculptures. If you want sculptures, but it's not about sculptures. It's about it's also art. And the city as a whole. And so before anyone in the audience looks remotely like this, I think I'll stop and I'll say thank you. I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Arzan. I love to live in the world. It reminds me of that I did in with hair and yes. It's called so it was based on technology and it was called don't notice the world around you. Yeah. And I'm so involved in this technology. Correct. True. So that would make my purpose easy to answer the questions. You should probably be So the question was how to rules you there's a mix. There's actually a mix. A lot of that are funded by sponsors who rent the island, the public space, the municipality, and then went to them there. You have like or like the large ones that I showed you, and a lot of them in New York are done by the Metropolitan Municipality of New York. They are the ones who fund it. They are the ones who fund it. Okay. So yeah, the question about the art exhibition which you okay, so there's Anita, this is Anita. She's a professor in the Data Institute and she has phenomenal knowledge of antiques and history. She knows areas in Mumbai like nobody's business. Then we have Ratan Boy. The architect, and of course his knowledge about the city and how about is phenomenal. There's an artist called Anil, and also that there's a Jyoti from which deals with the music part. So initially there were meant to be about 7 of us, but now we've come down to 4. So myself and Radha and Anita are there always. So it's like and the chairman was Mr. Jha. He's the one who sort of spearheaded this whole thing. He retired and now Rajiv Mishra has taken over as the chairman, who also has got phenomenal knowledge of like what can be done. Like for example, we say an area and we say we should do this in this area. He rattles off things that first you have to approach, then there is that. So the protocol and all that they are very well aware of all these people. Okay. Thanks. Your sculptures, the topic of one which you talk about, you mentioned that it's bronze. The famous specialty is from bronze. Yes. Correct. This sculpture is meant to commemorate a phenomenal institution. Okay, it's a large institution. It has added value to the institution. Till now, I have done stuff from mild steel, from stainless steel. I never touched fiberglass, although fiberglass is something that I go for my experimental works and all that. But so fiberglass was of course out of the fiction, but I suggested to them, I said there are very few people today who spend on bronze sculptures. I said, go bronze sculpture. Let's keep on bronze sculpture open. So it's like a good stamp on the sort of map of it that institution like that did a bronze sculpture and is there to stay. Like one piece of bronze is phenomenal, And hence I stressed on the material bronze. Very important that we have sculptures of that caliber.
Okay, that's the solidity behind the institution like this.
Solidity and absolute long life. I mean, it doesn't go anything. It just changes color according to the patina that it gets from the surroundings. It's wonderful. I mean, it'll just be there, And it's very heavy, so no one can shift it also.
Maybe a little bit like the old time statues that we have.
Absolutely. Yes, wrong, correct. That's it.
So the question is whether the sculpture is still around. I think
no, it's not around. It was shifted because the ownership of shifted. The sculpture was commissioned by architect Sharalati. Okay, and he called me to make the sculpture because he gifted this to the Sun and Sand group, who used to own Mural of India. Okay. Now, when they shifted out, when they changed to local, I think if I'm not mistaken, they took the sculpture and they're not being exported anywhere.
Okay. I was wrong. I thought it was still there. Where is the Sachin Tendulkar sculpture?
Sachin Tendulkar sculpture currently is in Bandra, Joggers Park. Currently near Bandra, Joggers Park. That area, since you mentioned it, Farooq, that area is going to be 3 new sculptures which we approved, which the MCMC has approved. Phenomenal pieces. I won't tell you more about it. You'll see in the near future, but very good classic pieces that will come around on the islands over there.
There's a question from somebody called Anna. She's asking how challenging is it to execute public art without government funds?
Number one, government doesn't fund. Government till now I've not done a single sculpture where the government is funded. Always a sponsor. The government since was sponsored by local builders. The Rhino was sponsored by CR Tires. The INS Vikrant was thankfully sponsored by ex-Commodore Dada and his team of fighter pilots. And of course, the new one is by the institution who's going to put it there. No government projects till now. And even if it happens, I had an inquiry once or twice. And what happens is that they go about it in a very clinical way, which sometimes I couldn't adhere to. They want, like for example, when I'm designing, I do my sketches in black and white. I don't use a computer and all that. And so they want the weight of the material, the time. They want it costing to be. Then they'll compare it with other sculptors and all that. It somehow doesn't work because there are grades of artists and there are grades of material. You understand? And somehow I'm not able to fit into this and apply for any competition like that. I just failed to do that.
Because you're a free spirit.
I think so.
There were compliments, of course, pouring in about your creativity, and somebody especially mentioned the wall behind you. They loved it.
Oh yes, those are photographs which are clicked by me all over. So I'll just write from here to here. These are black and white photographs which are me and my family. Of course, the one which I am in, I have not clicked.
When are your exhibition of photographs coming up?
Believe it or not, it was supposed to have been this year. We were getting together to do it this year. But I think next year now. Next year. I'm also doing a lot of black and whites, as you can see. If you check my Instagram and what I've been doing, I've been doing a lot of black and white sketches and my doodling and stuff like that. It's wonderful because the studio is not open. I need to do something, and that's what I've been doing. And I'll tell you one more crazy thing which I've been doing recently, and what I managed to do, but not perfectly. So is unicycling. I got a one-wheel cycle, and I've that now. So it's good fun.
So I think it's time to tell the people over here that you don't walk to work, you cycle to work.
Oh, I cycle to work. Yes, I cycle to work. It's very close, but I mean, yeah.
Vijay Lakshmi wants to know a little bit more about the sculpture of the little girl on Wall Street, if you have the information.
Yes. So basically, it's wonderful how that happened. It came as an afterthought. You know that the bull was there for years together with nothing in front of it. And I don't know the artist. I don't even know if it's the same artist. But then suddenly someone came and put this little girl there, very defiant. And I mean, I love to read more on it, but I just find that it's such a wonderful sort of piece complementing each other. It's like the bull is angry, but this little girl doesn't give a damn. You know, she's standing there with all her might and sort of, you know, shooing the bull off literally. You know, the posture, everything that is there is so wonderfully done. And again, the bull itself did something, but the bull with the little girl does something more. You know, now there's a story to it. So it's wonderful. I like I said, I don't know the artist, but it's whoever's put it there, it's very well thought of, and I think it's a wonderful idea. I just read recently from that there's a building in England somewhere which started cracking, and it showed cracks in the wall. Instead of filling those cracks, the owner started making empty frames, putting them around the cracks and giving them names. And it's become a fad now. It's wonderful. So you go up and you suddenly find these odd-shaped frames around, and you have the cracks in the center which work like works of art, you know. So it's very, you need to use your mind and sometimes do the simplest of things to get the effect, you know.
What do you believe the culture that's present in Bandra in terms of visual public art has not spread across the city in the way that it should?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Can you tell me again? Sorry.
Bandra has a great public visual art culture.
Yeah.
Why do you believe that has not been replicated in other precincts?
I think very frankly, it's to do with the people. I think they're very much open to stuff. When you look at South Bombay, a lot of rules apply and people want things almost as they were. Bandra, like I'll give you an example. Any young person coming into Bombay wants to stay in Bandra because he says that's where the young crowd is. You understand? So there's the youth has got the openness, and it need not be actual youth. I'm talking of even the elderly there. Their mind is young. They accept stuff more easily. There is more graffiti over there than what you find in the rest of the city and all that. Graffiti also is a form of art, except of course the ones which are used to deface stuff. That is not the ones I'm talking about. But I think Bandra, the attitude is very young, and hence they accept things quite quickly, you know.
Speaking of graffiti, what is your view on all the somewhat monotonous, boring, I love Baikala, I love Chembur signs, I love Shivaji Nagar?
Yeah, I mean, it's been taken directly from a lot of European cities, but I feel that it's getting very monotonous. There should be an added element of sculpture and art to it. For example, only writing that doesn't make sense. Someone has to do a proper iconography of what the lettering should be like to suit that sort of an area. You understand? Like for Baikala, it could be something to do with the zoo, but not like the animals they put right now, if you've seen them.
Well, I mean, the animals are horrible. Instead of enthusing the kids to go inside, I'm sure they enthuse the parents to take
So basically, I mean, when I'm talking about art, it should be good art. Of course, that is a benchmark sort of thing. So I feel that each of these should be designed well. They should have a similar language flowing because, of course, it's one city you're talking about. But there should be some quirkiness, so not quirkiness, some characteristic of the area they represent embedded within that lettering. I think right now it's just going, every corporator, every person is doing what he wants there, whatever size he wants, and just putting it anywhere. You know, I think it should be some standardization and something that adds on. So it's like a template. It's like a template. There is something which has to be the same, and there's something, an empty space where something has to be added. You know.
And speaking of ghastly animals, the ones outside Churchgate are no exception. Perina had a technical question for you. What makes you decide on a particular material? Do you decide the material and then the sculpture, or is it the other way around?
No, always the other way around. Material will depend on the topic that I'm working for. For example, I'll just give you an idea. I did a sculpture of a mother and child for a lobby in a building. I cannot use stainless steel in mother and child. You understand? The mother and child is a very cozy, very homely, very introverted theme. And it needs to be warm. So I use wood, which I carve. I use copper, which is slightly warmer. Similarly, the sculpture that I showed you of Aditya, the Birla, the man reaching out to the sun. I had to use stainless steel because I wanted the sharp edges of the steel to show like a knife, you know. And also it had to somewhat reflect what was, there would be cars going around. I wanted that when someone sees it, the reflection change when he sort of goes by. That I can't visualize in copper because it would have become a little colder. I can't visualize in wood definitely because it's out in the open. So there are criteria for deciding the material of every sculpture that way, where you require what. Sometimes iron works wonderfully. I mean, all my initial sculptures were from iron and it worked wonderfully because iron, I find, is in between the coldness of steel and the warmth of copper. Okay. You know, it's an in between.
Okay.